Greetings. Welcome. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. My name is Amir Bhimji. That quote on the title screen of this video by the great comedian Jerry Seinfeld is so very funny and yet so very true. Let me read that quote again to you. According to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking. Number two is death. This means if you go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy. Jerry Seinfeld. So very funny and so very true. How do you feel? Do you experience, or have you experienced when you first got into public speaking, any kind of nervousness, fear? And it's so very common. To me, fear and nervousness is in the mindset. And that's why just practice for public speaking is good, but makes you robotic. So you need to address the mental challenges. If you experienced any kind of fear or nervousness just by being in the midst of a group of people, then that carries over and that needs to be addressed. So to build skills, just like any other life skill that we discussed previously, whether it's stress management or wellness, it's part physical, part mental. So also in public speaking. My objective in this module is to motivate you. If you're already into public speaking, to take your public speaking skills to a higher level where you can have an impact. And what do I mean by impact? What I mean is where you connect with the audience, with your listeners, where that connection is such that they feel committed to what you are talking about. And eventually they commit themselves to take action. What a beautiful way to create change. Change for the better. Change for good. Whether it's in your social group, in your community, society, or world at large. And if you're just getting into public speaking, let me encourage you. Set your expectations high. So how do you get started? Start first and foremost by the people you know. The people you know personally who you admire, who you feel are very good. They are having an impact on their listeners, on the audience, where people want to talk with them. Ask them more questions, get to know them. Find out what they're doing. And then also look at historic speeches that have had an impact to see what kind of impact people can have. I want to share 3 speeches that stand out for me in my mind. And all 3 are available to hear and also see on video. First and foremost, 1963, Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech. It inspired a nation to reassess the racial barriers that existed in the country. 1961, John F. Kennedy, inauguration speech, where he uttered those famous words, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It was a call to action from John F. Kennedy to the nation to rise up and do what is right for the public good, for the greater good. And finally, 1987, President Ronald Reagan, in front of the infamous Brandenburg Gate, in the shadow of the Berlin Wall, that you might remember, divided Germany into East and West. And he addressed the leader of the Soviet Union at that time, Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev. And he uttered those famous words, that still stand out as an example of the impact a president can have. And his words were, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, one word at a time." And guess what? The wall came down. So that's the impact you can have by working on both the physical and mental aspects of enhancing your skills in public speaking. So what is the value, once again, in public speaking? What is the value of public speaking? It is empowering to persuasively communicate thoughts and ideas that positively impact many areas of your life. First and foremost, in all your communications, overall communications in your personal and professional life, because in every communication, that is what you're doing, communicating your thoughts and ideas. In your leadership skills, as a leader, a key leadership trait is the ability to communicate and influence your team, whether it is on organizational strategy or organizational change or anything related to the organization that you are leading. Last but not least, no matter what kind of work that you're doing, having the confidence to speak and communicate to influence enhances your career and professional advancement. What more can I say about the value of public speaking? It is best said in the quote at the bottom of the slide. The quote comes from President Gerald R. Ford. He states, and I quote, "If I went back to college again, I'd concentrate on two areas: learning to write and to speak before an audience. Nothing in life is more important than the ability to communicate effectively." Gerald R. Ford. President Ford, just like all the other presidents and other leaders, had ample opportunities to speak to large and small groups. And he had a great opportunity to bring the country together following his decision to pardon President Richard Nixon for his Watergate and related crimes. He failed. That is the value of public speaking when done effectively. So, what are the sources of power to make your public speaking impactful, like the examples I shared with you? Let me start with my most favorite one. It is the source of major power that carries over into the other aspects of public speaking. And that is the power of self-esteem and self-confidence. In the earlier modules of this course, we discussed at length the value of a healthy self-esteem and how to create one for yourself. And also we discussed the two types of self-confidence. One is the self-confidence that comes from within, because you feel comfortable within yourself and you enjoy the learning experience. You are not afraid of making mistakes. You're not worried by how others will perceive you. And so you can engage more fully in the process. The other self-confidence comes from just doing things over and over again, and it builds confidence. But then you become robotic, which is okay too. There are times when you need that. First and foremost, having a healthy self-esteem helps you be yourself. You are not pretending to be someone you are not. You are comfortable in your own self, with the pros and cons, with everything you know, you are comfortable, and even with everything you don't know. That allows you to project authenticity, genuineness, and enhance your credibility. With a healthy self-esteem where you accept yourself as you are, then you are able to say, "I don't know that. That was not part of our plan. I'd be happy to look it up and let you know," and so on and so forth. You are not afraid to say and share what you know and what you don't know, because you're not worried how you'll be perceived by others. You project approachability. And by approachability, I mean where people want to talk to you, where they want to come up to you, shake your hands, ask for your business card. And that in the process, it invites interaction, whether in the formal Q&A or as part of your speaking. But it invites interaction. People are comfortable interacting with you. You're able to express and deliver your message effectively because you can think in the moment. You don't memorize things in advance, which makes you come across as robotic. You memorize maybe the top 3 or 4 points, and then you are able to think in the moment, look at how the people, the listeners are reacting, and craft your message accordingly. And that allows you in turn to connect with the audience, to make connections. All of this sensitivity to the needs of the listeners makes those connections very easy in both the directions, from you as a speaker to your listeners and from your listeners to you. One of the most powerful sources of power that can help make your speaking more impactful. Let's take a look at the 3 V's of communication: verbal, vocal, and visual. Verbal is relating to the words you use to communicate your message. And message is king. Years later, people will forget what you wore, how you stood. They will remember the message. Just like in President Ronald Reagan's speech, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. That message has become immortal. The message can get lost if speakers ramble on and on and on. So the point is, avoid diluting your message. Less is more in communications. Anytime you have an idea or a thought, there's multiple ways that you can communicate that thought, that idea. But there's one way that's more impactful than the others. And that's something, as a speaker, you need to figure out what will work best for your message. The message is what people will remember years later. But to keep the listeners engaged while you are speaking, there's many attention getters that are available to you that you can use. There's quotes, there's stories, humor, anecdotes, and many more. Again, self-esteem comes into play here. Let's say your joke that you share or a story that you share falls flat. Maybe people react to your joke with boo. Someone with low self-esteem can get shaken up and lose his or her chain of thoughts. So once again, self-esteem comes into play in how you deliver that message. Power of the vocals. And by the vocals, we mean the sound of your voice, the way your listeners hear it, and the way your voice carries the words to your listeners. First and foremost, use your best speaking voice. We all have a range from a deep voice to a high pitch. And the best voice is produced from the diaphragm, and is produced when you exhale. Your voice propagation takes place in the medium of air, and your voice projects better when you speak only when you exhale. Leverage pauses. Pauses serve a very important purpose in communication, even though you are not speaking during the pause. First and foremost, it gives you a chance to inhale. So this way, you can exhale when you're speaking. Pauses allow you a chance to emphasize key points and pause for your listeners to become engaged as to what's coming next. And pauses allow your listeners time to process the information. Vocal variety. avoid projecting a monotone where you come across as monotonous. And the way to do that is by injecting vocal variety, by varying your tone, the pitch, the volume, and the pace or speed with which you speak. In general, slower is better. And finally, vocal clarity. With the increasing diversity, people are often concerned, will my accent get in the way? And the answer is a clear no. As long as you have vocal clarity, where your listeners can understand each and every word that you express in your communication. Overall, how do you enhance and leverage the power of the vocals? Practice reading out loud. Record yourself and have someone give you feedback. And a fun way to enhance vocal clarity, limericks. And I have 2 limericks for you right now. I will read the first one to you. And then I will invite you to read both, one at a time. Record both as you read them. And then have someone else listen to them and give you feedback if every word they hear matches the script for the limerick. You ready? Okay, I will read the first one. And the first one is a fly and a flea. A fly and a flea flew into a flue. Said the fly to the flea, what shall we do? Let us fly, said the flea. Said the fly, shall we flee? So they flew through a flaw in the flue. Okay, now it's yours. And the second limerick for your reading practice, recording, and getting feedback is called Susie Works in a Shoe Shine Shop. The focus in this section is on the visual. And by the visual is the third of the 3 V's of communication: verbal, vocal, and visual. And by the visual, what I mean is how you are seen, or better, how you are perceived by your listeners. If you take a video recording of your presentation and watch it and mute the audio, what you're left with is the visual. The visual is a very important component of the impact you have on your listeners. The one term that captures everything about the visual is your body language. And the body language consists of many aspects, starting with the first impression. What is the first impression you make on your listeners? It can last forever. Then being fully present. The last thing you want to see in a speaker is a speaker who does not seem engaged, is looking out the window, checking out the weather, is yawning, checking his watch to see what the time is. So you want to be fully present with the audience, mentally and physically. The next one is posture. There's closed postures that come easy to most people. And then there's the open posture, which at first appears uncomfortable. The open posture is the one you want. It communicates openness, invites listener engagement. The next aspect is gestures. As babies, gestures come very easily, even before they can articulate the first few words. And gestures come very easy for all of us when we are communicating one-on-one. But something happens with those gestures when we are in front of a group. We want to hide the hands in the pockets or behind the back. And you do not want to lose the value the gestures can have. The voice communicates the words that you have come up with to communicate your message. The facial expression and the gestures make your message come alive. by adding feelings and emotions. And last but not least, active listening. To your listeners, you are giving them a gift of attention, of validation, when you practice good listening manners by focusing on the speaker, restating, paraphrasing to reflect back what you hear, displaying empathy, and being non-judgmental. I have a few images relating to the visual aspects of communication that I'd like to share with you. I found these images to be inspiring, and I hope you do too, because anytime something inspires you, it leads change for the better. The first one to get you started on the right foot is the first impression. As the saying goes, first impressions last forever. And I love the quote by Will Rogers at the bottom. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Postures. These are examples of closed postures. Closed postures come easy because that's the way we tend to stand when we're talking informally with our colleagues. And so we become comfortable with that. But in group setting, where you're doing public speaking, you want to adopt an open posture. It communicates openness. In the beginning, the open posture feels uncomfortable. But once you get used to it, it becomes natural. In general, the open posture is arms by the side, standing upright, and face lit up with your smile. This is a good one about facial expressions. And the question is, which person would you talk to? And the answer is obvious for most people. The follow-up question would be, why? It's the same person. So what makes a difference is the facial expression. And the question for you would be, how do you know the facial expression that you are projecting, because there's no mirror in front of you when you're talking with people? I love this image. It's a great image. The quality might not be the best. It's not. But it's a beautiful display of feelings and emotions in two young girls from the same experience. And this next image, equally about feelings and emotions being communicated while talking, with a combination of facial expressions and gestures. They make the words that you use to communicate your message come alive. I can almost imagine what the person in each image might be saying that fits the facial expression and the gesture. And I'm sure you could too. There's lots of examples of gestures that are great to use and examples of gestures that are not so good. And here's one. The open arms gesture is phenomenal to indicate that you welcome the group, you welcome the people. And pointy fingers, not so good. Tend to get interpreted as accusatory or being judgmental. And last but not least, I don't like using the term eye contact. Eyes do more than just eye contact. I like the term eye communication because I believe eyes do communicate, as the image illustrates. As the saying goes, don't waste your words on the ceiling. Don't waste your words by looking at the floor. Don't waste your words at the space in between. Invest your words in people by looking at them through eye communication. I invite you to visit the video again, pause at the images if they inspire you like they inspired me. That should give you a lot to reflect upon. And as for me, that does it for me. I hope as we bring this discussion to a close that you will seize opportunities that come your way to step up to the podium or to wherever to engage in public speaking and create change for the better, for the good. As usual, I welcome your questions, your comments, your feedback. I will look forward to seeing you in our next module. In the meantime, you take care. Stay well. Goodbye.